My name is Sav Bedi and I'm the CEO of Fine Spinners Uganda Limited. Fine Spinners was a company incorporated in December 2014 with its first year of production in 2015. Fine Spinners is part of a larger textile conglomerate which spans the East African region, primarily in Kenya. Our sister companies in Kenya include Bedi Investments, which have been running for 50 years in the vertically integrated textile space. Fine Spinners Uganda came and invested in Uganda in 2014 for the primary purpose of adding value to Ugandan cotton. Ugandan cotton is some of the finest in the world, yet 95% of Ugandan cotton was exported to international markets before we invested in Uganda. We consume about 10% of Uganda's cotton crop today, and we span the entire value chain from cotton ginning all the way to making garments for export and for the regional markets. Currently, we employ 1,600 employees on site in Bugulobi, and we support over 15,000 farmers directly. This is largely in the west of the country in Kasese and in the east of the country in Bale. So our primary aim as a company is to reduce Uganda's cotton exports in lint format and actually encourage the production of garments which can be sold globally into European and US markets. Uganda exports about $50 million of lint every year. This has recently increased with the increase in commodity prices, but nothing to do with value addition. However, the policy of government and the policy of BUBU to encourage value addition locally is something which is very core to the ethos of the company. Fine Spinners creates 14 times value addition from lint cotton to finished product. And this, if you did for the entire sector, $50 million of cotton exports would become $750 million of t-shirt exports. That is a huge number for Uganda and would become the largest export for Uganda, far surpassing coffee. So it is our belief as Fine Spinners that Uganda is a very, very ripe country to exploit the opportunities to add value to Ugandan cotton and develop the sector. The investment climate in Uganda is something that we have found very, very encouraging. Actually, more encouraging than in regional markets compared to the rest of the EAC. We find this is the case because there is a very frank and direct discussion between government and government entities and private sector. Private sector is able to access the various ministries, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Agriculture, with relative ease. And we find the incentives that the government has put in place to promote value addition, second to none in the region. For instance, for the textile value chain in Uganda, there is a textile policy that was implemented about 5 years ago and continues to be revised and improved to encourage investment in the Ugandan textile value chain. Most countries around the world globalized and industrialized off the textile industry. It started in the United Kingdom with the Industrial Revolution, in the US with the Cotton Revolution, and then now China and India, you've seen them come on there to the forefront of the world on the back of textiles. That's because of the large number of people you employ in this value chain. So the government has acknowledged the responsibility in the role of development of this sector. So a couple of examples of the incentives that government has provided to allow us to thrive in this space. One of the main costs, so when you're looking at investing in any sector, we look at it from 5 main components. What is your bill of materials, which in this case is cotton. Cotton is widely available, and as I said, we only add value to 10% of Uganda's cotton. If we had 10 more fine spinners, that's when we would take the full capacity of the country appropriately. So we've got adequate supply of cotton, and it is well managed by the Cotton Development Authority. They control the quality of the seed, they control the quality of the crop, and that is important for us to export to the European and US markets. Also, in terms of pricing, the pricing is on a global basis, and this is an area which one must look at with great importance, because the reason for investing in Uganda in the cotton space is to get the cotton excluding the transport to the US, which is one way you get a competitive advantage if you've invested in Uganda as opposed to Kenya, which has a lack of cotton. So that's the bill of materials. On the other thing, on the utilities, you've got electricity and water. There's plenty of water available in Uganda, as you know, due to Lake Victoria. The National Water and Sewage Council is a very, very reliable supply. And electricity is supplied through Umeme. Again, very reliable supply of power. very competitive energy cost. I believe the weighted average energy cost in Uganda is about 12 cents. The ministry incentivizes the sector by providing a subsidy to the sector, allowing a 5 cents per kilowatt hour for fully vertically integrated textile value chains. This puts us on par with our competitors in Asia. If you look at the other factors, which is labor, Uganda has a young workforce which is relatively well trained, and there's a lot of universities which are focusing on vocational training, which is very important to our sector. Labor is a large component of our cost, and with the relative competitiveness of the labor cost and efficiency, I think this is a critical part of our investment in Uganda. The government has supported this through their vocational training across the board. And finally, logistics. Inland logistics, we've seen the development of the roads. We've also seen development in the SGR on the Kenya side, and now it's going to happen on the Uganda side. This will all aid in the logistical aspects. So through the facilitation of the Ministry of Finance creating an investment strategy for this sector, we've managed to develop quite well. I still think there's a lot of opportunities to grow this sector 10x, in my opinion, because there's still 10 times the cotton available for us to exploit. We're in continuous consultations with the Ministry of Finance, the PSST, on how to actually implement some of these things, which will make Uganda a destination for international manufacturing and sourcing in the textile value chain. And this is a very, very important part, and also ties into the COVID pandemic, which is where I think Uganda has a very interesting opportunity. So during the pandemic, we're all aware, markets were closed, supply chains were entirely disrupted, and the global textile value chain, it's a $1.8 trillion market in the US for apparel. The global textile value chain was very quick to break because it's very disintermediated. A typical example of a textile business would involve growing the cotton in Africa, exporting the lint to spinning mills in India, fabric is made in India, exported to Bangladesh in fabric format, garmenting is done in Bangladesh, and it is exported now to Europe. What we do in Uganda, what Fine Spinners Uganda does, is has everything under one roof. So what we call vertically integrated, this sort of a supply chain was very resilient through the COVID pandemic, because as China shut down and you weren't able to get your fabric, we were not impacted because our fabric was made in-house. We relied fully on Ugandan cotton. The only thing we needed to import from abroad was labels. So if we could not get labels, we could not put a label on the t-shirts, but largely the supply chain that Fine Spinners exhibits is a post-COVID dynamic supply chain where everything is under one roof. And we're seeing this shift in the global supply chains because you cannot rely on China, because right now China is still closed with its strict COVID-0 policy, and that is having an impact on very many other sectors. You're seeing this with inflation across the board in every single commodity and every other single manufacturing value chain. So this is an opportunity for Uganda because post-COVID, COVID plus a couple other dynamics. COVID, we saw the world is heavily reliant on China. So sourcing out of Europe and the US has decided consciously to shift away their reliance from China to other sourcing destinations. Also, the treatment of the Uyghur Muslims in China has meant that there's been embargoes and sanctions on Chinese cotton into the US, which has also created a great opportunity in Uganda. I do not like to rejoice in the pain of our neighbors, but the civil war in Ethiopia, which had a large investment in the textile value chain, approximately $1 billion went into the value chain between 2014 and 2016. That investment capital is now home and dry. Nobody is investing anymore in Ethiopia in the textile value chain. So that capital is looking for a new home. The new home will be Kenya and Uganda. Kenya, because of its labor efficiency, continues to do garmenting through EPZs, whereas Uganda has a tangible opportunity to develop the fabric side of the supply chain because of its excess, really good quality cotton. We talk about Egyptian quality of cotton around the world because of the Nile. The same quality of cotton exhibits here. We just don't market it as Uganda. So Uganda, post-COVID, has an opportunity to supply into Europe, the US, and regionally, because supply chains have broken down, and that allows for the government to look at this sector seriously and say, if we want to have significant investment here, if we want to see $1 to $2 billion of investment in this sector, what can we do to actually encourage this? A lot of the things are in place. It's just about fine-tuning certain aspects. Pricing of raw material, cotton, needs to be ensured that it's below world price because it's domestically available. That is, I would say, the main ask which would allow this sort of investment. COVID also disrupted the supply chain for all importers. Now, Uganda, like the rest of the EAC, imports a lot more apparel than it exports, and mostly through Mivumba. which is a big problem for the sector, because how do you compete with something which is inherently free? One of the challenges we've been tasked with by Honorable Minister Kasaija is like, I do not want to see a single Ugandan wearing mivumba in 10 years. So how can Fine Spinners stop that? And that is the way we approach every single one of our investments. How do we cover the region more? We were initially set up as an export-based business focusing on Europe. However, now, post-COVID, we have realized that when the markets were closing down, Europe didn't have a market. Nobody was procuring anything. So we started to look inside and say, guys, imports are not coming into Uganda. Exports are not leaving Uganda. So let us focus on developing the local market. Now, I would proudly say, post-COVID, we are 50% of the market share of 100% cotton t-shirts in Chikubu market, which largely used to be imported. And the importation of apparel has become very difficult. As you know, freight costs have gone through the roof. A container from China used to be about $1,800. Today, you're looking at $8,000 to $10,000. That has a direct impact in terms of cost inflation on the end consumer, and we don't incur that cost. So we're able to be more price competitive than dumped imports into Uganda. Another aspect about the dumped imports is they were avoiding all sorts of duties. They were declaring the value of t-shirts at levels which are not possible. And the URA, again, they are our partners in this entire business, have been very, very good to actually identify the various players who are dumping into Uganda, and have introduced a new duty, which is a volumetric based duty on the kg that is imported. So whatever value you declare, you cannot bypass the minimum weight, because weight you cannot play with. You can say this thing was worth 100 shillings when it was 200 shillings, but you cannot say it's 2 kilos when it was 5 kilos. So that has really helped with the dumping in the sector, and I'm very, very encouraged by the signs from the URA and the Ministry of Finance for pushing this through. We encourage them to continue to support domestic industry and encourage BUBU through these sort of initiatives, which are not protectionist, but are largely protecting the local Ugandan consumer from substandard product. And it also encourages the development of the local industry. In terms of timelines, that is also a very important part. You had massive delays at the port. You remember when we had Malaba having trailed back all the way to Webuye. This was a serious issue for importers. So I think COVID made us realize as a country that Uganda needs to be fully self-sufficient in the critical areas which are important. With the same rhetoric, which is why during COVID we focused on the production of PPE, because we were not allowing PPE into the country. We were not able to get PPE into the country because everybody hoarded back their PPE. So it was very important for us to even protect our workers in that instance. So during the COVID pandemic, we had a massive shift of our business plan and focused exclusively on PPE and face masks, which got us out of this pandemic. The plan post-COVID is largely our business plan post-COVID is largely to focus on what are our main learnings from COVID. One is supply chains are incredibly vulnerable, and we may have reached peak globalization. We may have reached peak international cooperation as well. We've seen an increase in antagonisms between the world's two superpowers, China and the US. And this creates an opportunity for the people on the ground, people in Africa, us in Uganda, Kenya, East Africa. We can exploit this massive seismic shift in sourcing where China was the factory of the world. I do not foresee that going forward. I see the US looking to diversify its exposure away from China. And we have great market access to the US under the AGOA program, the African Growth and Opportunities Act, which is running for 5 more years, I believe. And that is going to allow us to have duty-free, quota-free market access into the US. So we must see this as a serious opportunity. For us, we're going to continue with our vertical integration. We're going to continue to ensure that we go from field all the way to fashion and are able to provide fast lead times and a resilient supply chain for our export markets, along with an increased emphasis on supporting the domestic territory, the domestic markets, and providing supplies to Wananchi, the local people of Uganda and the region. And I would like to say that in terms of our business plan, we are doubling our capacity of spinning all the way through. We don't just do the front end, so we're going to double our capacity, largely to focus on production of fabric for export into the region and increase of product capacity to move into spaces which we have not done before. We've started a woven line, so we're doing trousers, shirts, and we're going to increase our product scope to cater for the domestic market. And that is our business plan post-COVID, and we envisage that the breakdown in supply chains is a great opportunity for us in Uganda and in East Africa in general. The journey of Fine Spinners has been a long journey from our investment here in 2014. There have been numerous challenges, there have been numerous ups, numerous downs. The biggest challenges we have faced initially was coming into a virgin sector, which was largely not developed. So the training of the local workforce required some time, and the capital that needs to be invested into a textile value chain is substantial. You're looking at Fine Spinners, this sort of a setup, costing about $40 million. So the return on investment is much longer than traditional trading value chains, especially when you're adding as much value as we are to Ugandan cotton. If you look at the various facets of our business, you have a very capital-intensive back end, which is the spinning side, and you have a very labor-intensive front end. That requires also very many different skills. So that was initially quite a challenge for us to get the right sort of people in place to make sure that the entire operation worked properly. Availability of utilities has always been present. However, the power cuts here and there from Umeme is slightly problematic in our sector, so we have to move on to generators. When that happens, there is a slight issue for us because the cost of generators are at 40 cents a kilowatt hour as opposed to the 5 cents a kilowatt hour, which makes us globally competitive. The logistics, obviously during the pandemic, we saw how the borders were clogged. That created a logistical problem for us, and we needed to actually see how to navigate this because our lead times were exceptionally long considering the delays at Malaba and at Mombasa. These were challenges. In terms of challenges we currently face, the biggest two challenges I would say are the cost of raw materials. The cost of commodities has tripled. Cotton has gone from 60 cents a pound to 154 cents a pound in a very short period of time. The volatility in these raw materials also makes it very difficult as an entrepreneur to navigate this environment. Primarily because if you buy cotton at 135 cents a pound and tomorrow it drops to 80, you will not be able to sell your product, and that will have a tangible erosion on your margin. The other aspect on the higher commodity prices and the higher volatility in commodities is the supply chain issues which still continue to exist, whether it be freight challenges, whether it be China continuing to be in a lockdown. This continues to pose a slight threat to the business in terms of continuity. One of the main concerns we have is a degradation in real demand due to the high levels of inflation we are seeing in the developed and the developing economies, coming from higher commodity prices. Higher commodity prices will push through eventually to the customer, which will mean there is a risk for higher cost of living in Uganda. This is what we see as some of the biggest challenges. However, nonetheless, they say that if you want to move fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you must need partners. And the partners that we have in Uganda have been instrumental and continue to be instrumental in our success. We would like to especially thank the Ministry of Finance for their policy, for their very candid approach on how to approach investment in this sector. We are encouraged and very invigorated by the ministry and how they approach long-term investment in this sector. It is second to none, and all their various arms, such as the URA, have created a very conducive investment climate. During COVID, they froze the various statutory payments, which was a great relief to the cash flow of the businesses. And I believe in terms of the dialogue that you're able to construct with the URA, with the NSSF. It is very direct, very candid, and I believe this is second to none in the region. So they have been very strong partners of ours. It would go amiss without me mentioning the Ministry of Agriculture and the Cotton Development Organization, in particular the MD, Madam Jolly Sabuni, for her support and desire to develop this sector to the extent that it is today. I would argue that Uganda would not have a cotton sector if the CDO was not as structured and as developed as it is today. In fact, Kenya lost the cotton sector as a result of not having a very strong CDO. CDO has resisted genetically modified seed. CDO continues to provide inputs to the farmers and allows for a serious development in the sector, and value addition is the main mantra. So with that in line, I would also like to thank His Excellency the President. He has been a very strong part of this project. He commissioned this project in 2014 and actually encouraged us to invest here. I remember a discussion he had with the chairman of this company in 2012, where he said, "Did you not go to school? Because if you went to school, you would know you do not take the raw material to your factory. You take the factory to the raw material. Uganda is your cotton. Why are you in Kenya?" So we've invested here with the blessings of His Excellency and his foresight and his long-term vision for value addition and building Uganda from the core through its Boo-Boo policy. Buy Uganda, build Uganda is the ethos that we see in every single ministry, in every single arm of government, and every single partner that we interact with in Uganda. So it would be wrong for me not to thank him for everything he has done for this sector, and we look forward to his continued support for fine spinners and the textile industry in Uganda. Ugandans, I would say the most important thing is to be patriotic, is to support your country, is to support your products, support your jobs. Do not encourage cheap imports from China, because when you import from China, you're employing a Chinese person, but you're actually taking a job away from a Ugandan. We have enough. We have one of the most youthful populations in Africa, if not the world. We must make sure that our youth, who are working diligently hard, going through school, getting educated, have a destination for their skills, have a destination for their abilities. And that can only be through industrialization. So I would encourage all Ugandans, wherever they can, follow the ethos set by government of Boo-Boo. Buy Uganda and you shall build Uganda. Through this media conversation, I would like to highlight how we support Uganda and local Ugandans across the board. Obviously, by having 15,000 farmers, we are creating livelihoods in rural areas, which directly are supported by fine spinners operations in Uganda. In terms of our 1,600 staff here in Bugolobi, which support an average family size of 5, you can see the trickle-down effect of the employment that we are doing here in Kampala. What is also worth to note is we run a training school where people are available and you can come. Anybody is more than welcome to come and get trained in the various skills of garmenting and textile manufacturing, and they will be provided a free meal. And this, if they want to join us in our employment and our growth, they're more than welcome to join. Should they want to take those skills elsewhere, they're happy to do so. We're also working with various refugee programs like the ICRC, and we are housing 100 refugees on site for training purposes as well. So we are, as a company, having a tangible impact on improving the livelihoods of Ugandans. In terms of bringing because this is a point which is very important to all Ugandans, the cost of living. A way we are hoping to bring the cost of living down is by being a fully vertically integrated textile value chain. We do not incur the freight costs that are very high right now. We're not a victim of the supply chain disruptions out of China. So as a result, we're hoping that our pricing will be able to allow people to afford t-shirts which are domestically manufactured, because the imported product is very expensive now. So in terms of cost of living, we're having a very big tangible impact on Ugandan lives. And our journey is going to continue. We are here for the long run. We are here to continue to support and build Uganda from its core. And Fine Spinners is going to be a very, very big part of this journey. And we thank the Ugandans and the local communities for all the support that they have provided us through the years. For God and my country.